We have some huge news around Cyberpunk 2077 and Sony/PlayStation, as Sony just announced on the official PlayStation website that it is pulling Cyberpunk 2077 from the PlayStation Store, and even further offering refunds to everyone who purchased it off their digital store. This is huge. This is literally an unprecedented moment in gaming, and I want to go over what exactly we know thus far and what may have led to this decision, as that part 2 is super interesting. So just first off, to read the actual message given by Sony, I'll have a link to this down below, but on PlayStation.com, titled Cyberpunk 2077 Refunds, SIE, which stands for Sony Interactive Entertainment, strives to ensure a high level of customer satisfaction. Therefore, we'll begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store. SIE will also be removing Cyberpunk 2077 from PlayStation Store until further notice. Once we have confirmed that you have purchased Cyberpunk 2077 via PlayStation Store, we will begin processing your refund. Please note that completion of the refund may vary based on payment method and financial institution. So based on the details available right now, this is quite literally an unprecedented situation in that it has never happened before. Many people immediately pointed towards Batman Arkham Knight getting pulled off of Steam. Basically similar to Cyberpunk, that game had a disastrous launch, except for that game it was on PC. With Cyberpunk, it was on base last-gen consoles, specifically the PS4. The major difference being this seems to be from Sony, or at least there's been no indication thus far that CD Projekt Red actually did this, especially considering Microsoft has been silent and it's been about an hour now since this news went live. When Arkham Knight was pulled from Steam, the developer themselves did it. It wasn't Steam saying, oh no, your game's getting deleted, but rather the developer being like, okay, this is so bad we have to pull it. Conversely here, it seems like Sony is saying Cyberpunk 2077 is in such a bad state right now that they will no longer be selling it and offering everyone a refund. That is really, really bad on multiple fronts. Just the reputation of CD Projekt to have somebody the size of Sony, literally the best-selling console that this game is available on right now. We haven't heard a response from CD Projekt, at least at the time of recording this, but do note it is about 2 to 3 a.m. in Warsaw, which is where they are located in Poland, so I wouldn't be shocked if quite literally they are sleeping and people are getting woken up out of bed. If there are any responses in the next couple of hours, I will pin a comment, but there's two major things that I think could have led to this. One of the first ones is, of course, that refund situation. CD Projekt posted this on their official Twitter a couple of days ago, basically apologizing for the state of Cyberpunk 2077 and saying you can request a refund via Sony or Microsoft if you purchase from their digital store. So that almost certainly led to Sony being flooded with refunds, and immediately in the wake of that, we saw Sony denying many of those refunds. But even further, one of the other interesting pieces of info that I think could have contributed to this was during one of the recent investor calls by CD Projekt. Following the release of Cyberpunk, they had an emergency investor call right around the same time this went live, and in that, one of the investors asked about the certification process on Xbox and PlayStation. Basically, before this game gets published and goes live, Sony and Microsoft had to certify it for their consoles. This basically meaning that it actually works on the consoles, it's not going to brick or break the console. This is typically why updates on those consoles take a bit longer. There's almost a degree of quality assurance for certain updates. And in that video, I did speculate that I wonder if the backlash we're seeing here could lead to Microsoft and Sony having more of the blame placed on them. Like, they had to certify this is okay, and if you look at the gameplay on the base PS4 in particular, the game's clearly not okay. Between the crashing overall, apparently some reports of the console crashing, and then just the extremely low FPS, getting 15 FPS in some segments, and this is well documented, to the overall buggy nature and even some of the texture issues, which makes the game look just weird at times. I would be shocked if the pressure from those two major things are what led them to this decision, as the frustration around what is the most anticipated and one of the best-selling games of the year overall started to get placed on Sony. People started getting mad at that company. This offers a lot of solutions. Right off the bat, it is an easy PR move. People are going to be praising Sony for, one, the option to actually get a refund, but for Sony standing up to a company releasing a buggy, or as many would call, an incomplete or broken game. One other interesting piece of context, on a recent Reddit post that did describe a refund denial, they mentioned how the Sony customer support representative they talked to did say that that Sony and PlayStation overall were planning to file a business complaint against CD Projekt for the state of the game, likely because of the flood of refund requests they were getting. So I think this could definitely paint a picture as to how things got to this point, how things built to Sony getting so frustrated or mad that they actually just pulled the game altogether. Still, I find this absolutely shocking. I am genuinely surprised this happened, and I wouldn't be shocked if perhaps Sony has some background or insider knowledge. We know CD Projekt mentioned that they're planning a patch for this game within this week or so either coming out tomorrow or Monday, Tuesday, unless they are working the weekend, which this may lead to them working the weekend. I wouldn't be shocked if Sony was kind of like, hey, what do you have in store for this patch, or saw a preview of what they were planning to patch in this time frame. And we're kind of like, that's not good enough. The timeline CD Projekt laid out right now is that the final patch of 2020 would be this next one, and it would mainly focus on game crashes or critical errors with the game, not so much on performance stability or the visuals overall. Those two bigger updates would come with one in January and with one in February. Maybe Sony looked at this time frame and was like, this is just unacceptable. We can't wait a month after the release of the game to have it be up to par with what consumers expected, or as some would argue, just being in a working or playable state. And then with that context in mind, they decided that they were going to make this overall decision. Of course, we don't know right now. There aren't a ton of details as far as the context of this one. I wouldn't be shocked if we hear a lot more in the coming days. I wouldn't be shocked if CD Projekt's stock absolutely plummets and they are forced into another emergency investor call as a result of this. Although this also does raise some questions for me as to what's going on here. This almost feels personal. Like, we've had games in a far worse state than Cyberpunk. Fallout 76 comes to mind. I covered that quite extensively. Fallout 76 had an immensely buggy release that was only topped by Anthem. Now, you could definitely argue one way or another, is the base PS4 version of Cyberpunk worse than the Anthem release? Maybe, but you could definitely argue not. That was just a few years ago, and we saw inaction from both Sony and Microsoft. So what led to action this time? Although the explanation I gave earlier with the refunds and the certification process definitely could be it, it just feels like there has to be something more. I feel like that couldn't be all there is because of the scale of this decision. I mean, even just for Sony revenue-wise, even though of course they do have a new console release that is going on, they're going to be refunding tens of millions of dollars of copies, I'm sure. I imagine most copies for consoles sold on PlayStation, and then to not even offer this across what will likely be the holiday break. This also makes you wonder what's going on with CD Projekt. Will they somehow rush to get this fixed or resolved before the holiday break, as people are opening gift cards for PlayStation and looking to spend them on something or another? Even though this initial news is massive, there is a lot more to come without a doubt. Between the stock reaction, CDPR's response to this, and even how true Sony holds to it, not to mention whatever Microsoft ends up doing. But I think one of the biggest takeaways to remember from this one is Sony more or less just told basically the world, considering how much attention and coverage this announcement from them is going to get and the overall hype level of Cyberpunk to begin with, that Cyberpunk 2077 is a broken game. Sony just clarified that for everyone. This will likely get mainstream media attention, and in one way or another, Sony just confirmed for a lot of people that you shouldn't be playing this game yet. Now, of course, that's specific to last gen with the PlayStation 4, but do you really think that's going to be held in translation as this ripples through media overall? Do you think that is going to get carried over? I don't think so. I think a lot of this is just going to be that Cyberpunk is broken, and for a lot of people that are buying presents, that are delivering presents, this message is going to be heard loud and clear, and I think that could be one of the biggest impacts overall, the overall reputation this game has. And I want to end this one off as almost a bit of a warning. As much as I just want to sit here and praise Sony for what can be viewed as a very good and positive decision, and perhaps even a good step in the right direction, imagine when we get buggy game releases in the future, it's not just fan backlash, review bombing, and criticism on Twitter, but Microsoft and Sony actually stepping up to be like, hey, we're pulling your game, it's unacceptable. That would be massive. But this whole situation just feels odd. Sony must have known this was coming. It's not like they couldn't have access to the game on base PS4. They must have seen it to certify it, and they had to certify the patches for the game on PS4, so they saw the progress being made incrementally. So it makes you wonder, is there something else going on here? Is there a deeper story behind this all? And to me, it definitely feels like there might be something. Either way, I'd love to hear from you guys down below. I'm sure many will be commenting your reactions. But with that said, I thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.